welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. In soybeans, there are a lot of different herbicide choices that you have. They aren't always all good and they aren't always broad spectrum, but there are quite a few different products. However, as soon as we get to flowering in soybeans, those choices start to go down. We'll talk about some of the choices you have before flowering versus the ones you'll have afterwards.
Well, one of the things you may have noticed if you were out scouting your fields this summer is potential lodging issues or actual lodging issues in corn, in wheat, in almost any crop out there. So today we want to talk about why did your crop lodge and what can you do next year so the same thing doesn't happen again.
Well, one other thing that you want to make sure you get fixed this year in your fields is weed control. If you've got our weed of the week, you need to wipe that thing out or it's going to hurt you. We'll talk about how to control our weed of the week later in the show. But first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics in agriculture. It's when people bring up the words conservation and sustainability.
Certainly, as farmers, we want to make sure this ground is productive, and we want it to be even more productive tomorrow than it is today. And that's easy for us as farmers to understand, but if you aren't on the farm, you may not understand it. You may think, you know what, farmers are probably motivated by the dollar, and they're looking at how can I get the most money out of this ground today, and who cares about tomorrow because I might not be here. Well, that's really not how farmers look at it. In fact, the ground that I'm standing on right now, my great-grandpa farmed it. My grandpa farmed it, my dad farmed it, and here we are. Fourth generation farming this same soil, and we're very hopeful that the next generation, that our kids will want to farm this ground too. And that's how we look at ground, and when it comes to terms like conservation and sustainability, that's what I think. I think, wow, I want to make sure this ground is in great shape, so when my kids want to farm it, they're able to do so and make some money.
Okay, and I do not look at that at all. I look at the words conservation and sustainability as we want to remain the same, okay? And the whole thing is, I do not believe that God put me here on earth to help farmers remain the same. Our job is to figure out how we can provide more food, how we can make our ground better, how we can make our communities better and the environment better. I don't want to just stay the same. Let's make things better. So when we talk about conservation and sustainability, those words to me mean stay the way it is. What we're looking for and what we're always talking about here on Ag PhD is to try to improve things. So I want to go a step above and beyond conservation and sustainability. So don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we want to do anything bad for the land or the environment or anything else. All I'm saying is, with modern science, we now know how to farm better. We know how to make the land better. We also have much better equipment we can farm with, much better technology that we can use, so we can make things better, and that's really what I'm after.
I do look at both of those terms as, all right, let's protect the environment. Let's be frank, that's what it is. It's not about, hey, do we keep farmers in business? Do farmers make money? It's, let's protect the environment. So you take a field like the one that we're standing in. We've reduced the tillage in this field. The field's a little bit rolly. It's not, super big hills or anything like that. But even on our flat ground, we've reduced the amount of tillage that we're doing over the years versus what my grandpa was doing, or even my dad, what he was doing when he first started farming. So we're leaving more crop residue from last year's crop on the soil surface so it can protect the soil. And you say, well, how does that work? Well, one of the big things is rain. When you get raindrops and they hit on black soil, what happens, well, any color soil, but it hits on bare soil, it splashes and it brings some particles of soil up. And as it does that, when water's running off the field with heavy rains, it's going to carry some of that soil with it, and we have erosion. And when we leave crop residue on top of the ground, now all of a sudden those rain droplets that are really falling pretty fast and hard are going to hit on some residue, get deflected, and not stir up all that soil, so we don't see nearly the erosion problem. The other thing that we've done in this particular field is we've improved the drainage. When we talk about drainage tile or subsurface drainage tile, the biggest benefit we've got, it's not necessarily all about the water and raising a bigger crop, but we look at erosion, and erosion has been reduced, and you can see that in university studies over generations, that as soon as we put subsurface drainage tile in, we're going to have less soil erosion because now more of the water can move down through the soil instead of across on the top.
One of the other big things that we've done is we're placing the fertilizer exactly where it needs to be. So whether it's corn or soybeans in this particular field, those crops are raised in 30-inch rows. And what we'll do is in the fall, fall, we will place the fertilizer directly below where we're going to plant in the spring, and that's thanks to RTK GPS. So we can, what we call strip till, place the fertilizer where it needs to be. We're more efficient with our fertilizer use, so we can use less fertilizer and get more crop. And, you know, I mean, that's really what we're after here, is trying to best use our overall budget and our overall nutrient package and everything else, best use that to raise a great crop. So we're not overusing nutrients, but we're better utilizing those nutrients. So yeah, it's really been a lot of fun. This is a great topic. We love talking to non-farmers about conservation and sustainability. You know, those words are popular buzzwords today, but what we're looking for on the farm is a step above and beyond that. We want improvement in our land.
And one thing that's definitely improved over the years is weed control. Controlling weeds like our Weed of the Week is not that hard if you get out ahead of it. We'll talk about the options coming up later in the show.
Regalia RX biofungicide activates a plant's natural defense system, limiting the effects of disease and improving overall plant health. Regalia RX complements your fungicide program to optimize yield and strengthen return on investment. Ask your retailer for Regalia RX today.
Precision in grain moisture management can save you thousands in spoilage and elevator docks. The AgriDry Bullseye Controller monitors temperature and grain moisture and is available for all dryer makes and models. Plus, our AD-Link feature gives you 24/7 remote monitoring and allows you to control your dryer wherever you are. Call us today for more information.
Dry Load Store, 1-855 AgriDry.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
I've been involved in developing new technologies in agriculture for over 3 decades. The changing times demanded that we develop new and better equipment. Dry powder applications on seed can only be highly successful if they can be easily, effectively, and accurately applied to the target. That's where our company, Changing Times and CT Applicators, come into the picture. The innovative CT Applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, soybean inoculants, or other dry products. Remember, CT Applicators for the changing times.
Could I boost my potential by foliar feeding? You can. Foliar feeding can correct nutrient deficiencies and sustain your crop through stress. It's a great way to deliver nutrients that your crop lacks to reach its full potential. Research proves it. Applied alone or in combination with your crop protection program, AgroLiquid products assure that when the season presents opportunity, you can boost your crop's yield potential by foliar feeding. For more info, visit agroliquid.com.
Your time is valuable. That's why you need a Hagie STS application system. Hagie STS products are designed for precision and efficiency, allowing you to make applications all season long with just one machine. Contact your Hagie rep today.
One of the most important times in the life of a soybean plant is flowering. We're at the start of the reproductive phases, and at that point you really want to be careful with what you're spraying on the crop just to make sure that we're not damaging the crop at all, we're not slowing it up at all, because we want that reproduction to go tremendously well to help us get higher yields.
I want to relate this back to disease management in your soybean fields real quick. And when we look at sudden death syndrome, it's just such a great indicator for us of when a plant receives stress. When we don't see sudden death syndrome show up until late in the season, look at what happened a week or so before you start seeing that sudden death syndrome. There's a stressor in there. Maybe it's bad weather. Maybe it's extremely dry. Maybe you've been extremely hot, something like that. Or maybe there's something you've put on the plant that's caused some stress, like a herbicide, for example. We're going to talk about these herbicides around flowering because, hey, that plant is already going under a lot of stress trying to reproduce, trying to get these flowers fertilized, trying to start making pods and all that kind of stuff that goes on in the reproductive stages. Now we're trying to kill weeds, and it's not the easy weeds, it's the tough weeds that, for example, Roundup doesn't control. Now we've got to use something a little more harsh, trying to kill a pigweed or something else out there, we're putting some stress on that crop. Now, I'm not saying necessarily, hey, you're going to give up 5 bushels of yield because you put on this harsh herbicide, but what I am saying is we really have to be conscious of that we're putting on stress at a really awkward time for that soybean plant, where we could potentially impact yield and impact how many of those flowers actually get fertilized and stay on the plant.
We talk all the time about the importance of residual herbicides, pre-emerge residual herbicides in soybeans. This is one of the reasons why. So you don't have to go spraying later on in the season with something that's harsh that could potentially hurt the soybeans. And again, let me just say, with all the herbicides that are labeled on soybeans, they're labeled up to a certain time frame for a reason, okay? For the most part, they are relatively safe. So we don't want to get you in a big panic here or anything else. But nevertheless, if I had my choice, I'd like to spray absolutely no herbicide after the time those beans start to flower. Okay, that said, let's start talking about these products individually. I'm going to bring up FlexStar to begin with because that's the easiest one. That used to be not even labeled after flowering. Well, now it may be labeled after flowering. You can check your label for your state and everything. But the whole thing is, we're looking at a 10-month rotational restriction to corn. Okay, so if soybeans in the area we farm in the northern part of the United States don't start flowering until sometime around July 1st, maybe a few days before that, but sometime around July 1st, what's 10 months later? Well, that's May 1st. Well, there aren't a lot of farmers I know that want to start planting corn after May 1st. Okay, so if you like to start planting April 15th, that means you have to have your FlexStar done by June 15th.
And that's counting on good weather. Let's say that your weather does not cooperate for you and all of a sudden you just don't get much rain the later part of the summer and into the fall. Some of that FlexStar could still be hanging out there. Now, this is more of a problem as we move further north in the country and further west. But it certainly can be a problem for people even further south. When we look at the use rates of FlexStar, this is one of the things that has been done, especially as you come north and west, that the guys are using maybe 12 ounces of FlexStar instead of 20 ounces or more. That definitely helps you by reducing that rate, but giving yourself more time for that herbicide to break down in the soil and become safe for next year's corn, that's important too.
All right, let's talk about Cobra. This is one of my favorite ones from the old days, 25 years ago. A lot of people were using Cobra, and we'd always tell them, look, after you spray Cobra, take a vacation for 1 to 2 weeks. Don't even go look at the beans because you're going to think you killed them a lot of times. Okay, so first of all, if you want to minimize the amount of damage you do with Cobra, make sure you have good micronutrient levels in the plant. We used to really encourage the use of soluble boron, together with Cobra, because a lot of times we found that, hey, low levels of boron in soybean plants was one of the reasons why they couldn't tolerate Cobra very well. But I would take it further than that. Copper, manganese, iron, zinc, all those micronutrients are really critical. So you want to have a good nutrient package overall on your farm, and then you'll have less leaf burn from Cobra, less leaf burn from FlexStar and some of these PPOs. But anyway, with Cobra, I would just say, you know, you may have heard about some great soybean grower that uses Cobra to shrink his beans down a little bit and then he has better yields. Well, that may work for him. For us, it has not worked that way. It's actually hurt yield if you don't have rain after you spray the Cobra. So just make sure you're using all these products with a little bit of caution, and don't just take what somebody can do 3 states away as gospel for your own farm. Try it out a little bit yourself first. Our suggestion is, if you want to spray Cobra, it'll probably be just fine if you spray before flowering. Not really much worry about yield loss, and you'll actually get a little bit of disease suppression. You'll have less white mold. You might have some of these other diseases. That's a proven fact.
So when we think about the herbicides here, we're looking at ones that are targeting certain weeds. Lamb's quarters has been a big problem across the country again this year. The product of choice has been Harass, or the old Harmony type products, or the old Pinnacle if you remember back into the 90s. The challenge with using Pinnacle, or now Harass, has always been, well man, it really shortens up the beans wherever I do that. So guys that spot spray notice this out in their field. If they're spraying patches of Lamb's quarter and they spray Harass, yeah, those beans are going to be a little bit shorter, but you do knock out the Lamb's quarter. So what's the trade-off there? Is it worth it? If I've got late emerging Lamb's quarters and I really need to do something, there isn't a better product to use than this. So if you need to use it, you need to use it. But just be advised, you are going to shorten the beans when you use Harass.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to hurt yield. Again, we'd like to do that before flowering, but worst case scenario, hey, if I get a whole bunch of weeds out there, we don't want to lose 5 bushels on yield from weeds and be worried about, oh, I shortened my beans, I burned my beans a little bit. Most of the time, that doesn't really hurt much in terms of yield, if any, especially if you have some rain afterwards. One other thing I wanted to mention here before we wrap this up is with some of the ALS herbicides. Let's take Pursuit, for example. We also always used to talk about the reduction of apical dominance. In other words, the top part of the plant is controlling that plant. Okay, but once you spray Pursuit on many times, you will not find that top part controlling it. You'll find that you'll have more branching out with the plant. It in effect changes the plant. doesn't necessarily mean higher or lower yield, but it changes the plant a little bit, and we just worry about a lot of those things once we get to flowering and beyond.
Well, we've talked about all these helper type products, but what about the main product that's going to be used across the country, Roundup? Should we be spraying Roundup late in the season? And what do you think about the Roundup Safener MegaGrow?
Well, MegaGrow is a patented safener for Roundup. We throw that in every time we're spraying Roundup, and for all the farmers we advise around the world, throw some MegaGrow in. If you haven't tried that, I would strongly suggest you do. It reduces the yellow flash that you'll have, and you have just better recovery, quicker recovery out of your soybean plants. The thing with Roundup, again, if we had our choice, we'd like to spray before flowering. But hey, if you've got a bunch of weeds in there later on, you're already making a trip with fungicide, insecticide, we throw in Roundup a lot of times there too. I don't like that, but if we've got weeds, we gotta get those under control. You know, everybody's looking for this silver bullet answer on what can I do to increase my yields? Let's go back to the very basics. You've gotta have great weed control. We'd really like you next year to look hard at a stronger pre-program if you have to go spraying multiple times post-emerge rather than just once. Well, one of the other things you're going to need to accomplish your goals is control of our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to stop it on your farm coming up later in the show.
Dirty work pays. That is if your dirty work includes a SoilMax Gold Digger tile plow. SoilMax tile plows feature zero deflection technology. With the only tile plow factory paired with Ag Leader's IntelliSlope control system, you eliminate the need for grade calculations and lasers. So make your next investment in a SoilMax Gold Digger. Better yield, longer planting and harvest windows, better water management is all yours with SoilMax. Visit soilmax.com.
A farmer's attention to detail is what makes the difference. You take the time for service management because you know how vital it is to your operation. You service your field like everything else because soil sampling makes all the difference and gets the results you want. Download the app Soil Test Pro and start grid sampling today. Keep your farm growing strong. The more you test, the more you know.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots from Monsanto Bioag is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more, and is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Get Quick Roots today.
For lower costs, higher production, Mandico Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Avoid costly downtime with Twister's ease of maintenance. Its unique Coulter suspension allows it to follow the contour of the field yet remain forgiving in rocks. Our hydraulically adjustable Coulter angles mean you never leave the cab, making residue management easier, more efficient. Spring or fall, the Mandico Twister is the new leader. Check with your local dealer or visit mandicoagri.com.
Take a look inside any rotary combine and you'll find single rotor technology. Technology Case IH introduced over 35 years ago with the axial flow combine. But unless it gives you more bells and whistles with fewer belts and chains, more power using less fuel, it's not an axial flow. Because while the heart of every rotary combine beats red, only Case IH gives you the power to do more.
One of my favorite discussions with farmers is when their corn falls over and they say, well, it's got to be the fault of the seed dealer. And immediately they call the seed dealer and they give them a hard time because they didn't sell them the right variety of seed because this variety stood and this other variety did not. But here's the whole thing. When you look at soil tests, almost all the time, the lodging issues go back to soil tests. So we want to talk about that a little bit today.
Well, when you talk about soil tests, we're talking about fertility, obviously. And when you think about it, what do I need fertility-wise to keep my crop standing better and to reduce stress and improve yield and all those things? So yeah, you may call your seed dealer and say, you know what, what's going on? I got this variety or this hybrid planted and it's falling over. But the problem is not I got the wrong hybrid. It's how do I feed this thing? And what did I do wrong in my fertility program? Because obviously this particular particular variety or hybrid needs some more fertility. I didn't do it right because it's not still standing. Let's find out what it is. Now, the biggest culprit has been potassium, some kind of issue with potassium, but the soil test says parts per million are really good. Right. And it gives you a false sense of security.
That's right. It's very misleading because if you've got tremendously high levels of calcium and tremendously high levels of magnesium, you know what? If you've got what would be a normal level for some other farmer with potassium, that's not in ratio with your calcium and magnesium, maybe your hydrogen, your sodium, the other stuff that you have in your soil. So what we're looking for is in a base saturation test, we want to see at least 4% K. If you don't have at least 4% K, the odds are high that in the future you're going to have some lodging problems and probably reduced yield. In addition to potassium though, you got to look at manganese, copper, some of these other nutrients that you've got, and then the other side of it is just excess nitrogen. So if you're really low on all these nutrients that are important for building the stalk strength, and then you overdo it on nitrogen, and hey, don't beat yourself up if you've done that. We've had that happen on our own farm too. We've really worked on correcting that in the last 10, 15 years. But anyway, if you have excess N and you don't have all the rest of the stuff to support your stock, you're going to have a lot more lodging issues.
When we've got lodging issues, it's mainly a nutrient issue. Now, that's not saying there aren't some other things that influence this. For example, let's say that your planting population is wrong. We got so many calls this spring again of, hey, I screwed something up on my planter and all of a sudden I put on 44,000 corn plants instead of 28,000 or something like that. And what do I do? Should I go out and rip it up, or should I just try and fertilize more, or what? And you know what? As soon as you do that, you step up and put way more plants out than you were planning on. You were going to feed 28,000 corn plants. Now you have 44.
Again, if you've got lodging problems on your farm, let's not go blaming the seed. Let's look hard at the soil fertility, but then also look at your planting population, look at compaction, look at drainage, some of those things. These are all real keys to figuring out what to do in the future, because quite frankly, we don't care what happened in the past. What we do care about is what are we going to do on our farm for the next 10 or 20 years? How can we make it better so this problem doesn't happen again? Well, hopefully one of the problems you don't have to fix is controlling our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Weed of the week is Swamp Smartweed.
All right, there's lots of different smartweeds out there, and you may say, swamp smartweed? I don't know anything about that. I might know Pennsylvania, or I might know lady's thumb, or a number of different smartweeds that are out there. Swamp smartweed is the toughest. And you say, oh, sure it is. It's your weed of the week, so it has to be the toughest, right? Well, it's a perennial, and that's the big difference. So when you look at swamp smartweed, there's a couple of things that'll help you differentiate this from other smartweeds. Now, it looks very similar to Pennsylvania smartweed and also to lady's thumb. But as you go out and look at the plant, swamp smartweed is hairy. Then, as you pull a plant up, you'll see that it's got rhizomes running across underneath the ground. And once you see that, okay, hey, it's a perennial plant. That means it's probably swamp smartweed.
When you hear the name swamp, you're probably automatically thinking low wet areas. Yup, we do see it there quite commonly. Fix the drainage problem. Raise a better crop. Have better fertility for your crop. Do the right things for your crop, and your crop will choke it out a lot of times. But otherwise, your best bet for control is probably Roundup because it is a perennial. Just use a good strong rate.
Well, and the big thing there is don't do your tillage before you spray Roundup. So if you've got a perennial weed patch, any perennial weed, if you're doing tillage in that field, that's fine, but just lift up and don't do tillage right through that patch. Spray your Roundup. That way, if you spray a high rate of Roundup, you carry a lethal dose to every growing point, and as long as those rhizomes are connected, that Roundup can move through the plant and even get the shoots that were gonna pop up next week or a couple weeks from now.
Other than Roundup, we don't see great activity out of dicamba or 2,4-D unless you're going with a real high rate, and I guess I like status personally in corn. In soybeans, there's really not much you can do. Pursuit might have a little bit of activity, but otherwise, it's mainly Roundup or Liberty.
And in wheat, I'd focus on your burn down. I like a strong strong rate of Roundup in the burn down, that's your best bet.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
There's no magic to farming, but there is precision. So how precise do you need to be? I'll give one example in today's Iron Talk. With the cool spring of 2015 in the upper Midwest, crops got off to a slow start in many cases. The fear of doing reduced till or no-till is that in cool years the ground won't warm up as fast in the spring. In strip-till, a strip is blackened where the planter is designed to come back and place a seed. So what happens if you miss the strip with your equipment and the seed is actually placed in the residue between the tilled strips? The answer is simple. Your emergence is delayed, and it will take longer for the young corn plants to reach the fertilizer strip placed by your strip tillage machine. How much will that impact yield? The answer will come at harvest time. Certainly, the corn will take longer to reach maturity, which will, at a minimum, result in wetter corn, which, even if it yields the same, takes away profit from the field. Does precision farming pay? The answer is yes, but only if you are precise with your execution. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now, back to the show.
Wake up, breakfast is served. Your roots crave P. Most of your applied P gets tied up in the soil, a natural phenomenon known as phosphorus fixation. Fix the problem with Avail Phosphorus Fertilizer Enhancer. Avail makes more P available to your roots, here, here, and here. Increasing P availability can lead to increased P uptake in the plant. That's more P, and more P. More phosphorus for your crop can mean more results in your bin. An average of 9.6 bushels per acre of corn. Breakfast is served. Supercharge your P with Avail.
I wish I could side dress more than just nitrogen.
You can. While side dressing is efficient for nitrogen applications, you can also use that opportunity to apply PK and the micronutrients your crop needs. AgroLiquid's Calibrate and MicroLink products allow you to nutritionally balance your side dress application efficiently and economically. Let Agriculture Liquid Fertilizer help you make your next crop a bumper crop. For more info, visit agroliquid.com.
Being a farmer means securing your land and livelihood for the future. Harvest Solutions from Capello USA have the grit to get you there. Our product lines for corn, sunflowers, and forage are designed for efficiency and longevity, preventing harvest loss while minimizing maintenance and downtime. To do everything you can to advance your farmland to the next generation, call us at 855-CAPELLO or visit us at capellousa.com. Capello USA, Italian craftsmanship, American grit.
Welcome to the 30-second tour of your local Poet plant. Local producers sell us tons of their grain. We grind it, mix it with water and special enzymes. The result is fermented, distilled, and dehydrated until it's 200 proof alcohol. Corn oil is extracted, and protein and nutrients are condensed, dried, and turned into animal feed, bringing our tour to an end with high-protein feed and cleaner-burning high-octane fuel. Visit poet.com to learn more.
Working in agriculture over the past 3 decades, I saw a need for an accurate way to apply dry product to seed. That's where our Changing Times applicators come in. The CT applicator brush sifts powder into small particles, resulting in proper distribution. Quantities can be adjusted by the speed of the brush rotation. This allows for even and accurate distribution of product. Application at the time of planting can be used with any seed delivery system and saves farmers time, labor, and money. Remember, CT applicators for the Changing Times.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
On your farm, you need speed and year-round effectiveness in your tillage program. The Quick Till from Norwood Sales allows you to move quickly through your fields, maximizing time and improving yield. Constructed of heavy-duty materials, the Quick Till is ideal for both spring and fall applications, from preparing a healthy seedbed early in the season to breaking up corn residue after harvest. For more information about how a Quick Till can improve fields on your farm, call Norwood Sales today.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but for more agronomic information, we invite you to tune in to the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us on Sirius XM Channel 80 each weekday at 2 p.m. Central.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show, where we'll have another Iron Talk, Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
While the population of our planet grows each year, the amount of farmland we have to grow food for everyone becomes less. According to the USDA, farmers will need to produce as much food in the next 40 years as they have in the last 500. To learn how they are doing it sustainably, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.